Welcome back to the Laravel Community Spotlight Series. With me today is Stephen Rees-Carter. He is out of Brisbane, Australia, security
Yep.
consultant, pen tester, creator of Securing Laravel, Laracon's conference speaker, and probably a few other things that I'm totally missing. So welcome to the show, Stephen, and just do a quick intro to that if anything I missed.
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah, I think the only big thing that you missed is my course, Practical Laravel Security, which is a hands-on interactive security course that I'm desperately trying to get finished this year.
Nice, nice. Um, so I guess my first question, you're sort of the Laravel security guru now. Like everybody comes to you if they need any kind of security thing. Um, how did you get started down that path? Because it seems like a lot of developers, they want to create products and want to do this other stuff. Where you just kind of embrace the security from the beginning.
Yeah, it's a kind of interesting journey actually because I mean I've been interested in security for ages, and I worked for a security company a while ago doing development, and then left them to work for a different company doing development. But as part of that role, I slowly started picking up more security type things. Um, and then when I was actually looking for a part-time job, I saw a job offer up for you do part-time WordPress cleaning, so cleaning infected WordPress sites, which I thought would be utterly fascinating. I mean, not everyone wants to look at malware all day, but I thought it'd be a cool idea. So I went and did that for a while. That was kind of part-time around my other dev work, and then joined them full-time on their dev team, working on their tooling that helped with cleaning infected sites. And which was a tool built in Laravel. Very interesting tool actually, because of how it works, like looking for malware in WordPress. And so I did that for a bit, and then in the middle of COVID, utterly burnt out, had to take some time off work, and so I took about 6 months off. And in the middle of that, in COVID, I started doing Laracon online talks and doing security talks there because interested in security, wanted to do speaking stuff, and I did some. I'm not telling the story in order at all, so forgive me if I'm jumping around a bit. I was doing some WordPress security talks before COVID at like WordCamps and things. And so I was already doing kind of the security education stuff, but in the WordPress side, because that's what the company that I was working for was doing. We were doing WordPress security and security education. And then, yeah, COVID, I was doing like Laracon online talks about security things, and then took some time off work, just was burnt out and needed a break. And I started securing Laravel in the middle of that, which is my mailing list, still with the intention of getting a dev job. And my plan was to keep doing development while writing securing Laravel on the side and doing my Laracon talks about security. And security at that point was still kind of just my hobby side thing that I was doing around being a developer. I mean, no one else in the community was doing it, so that kind of helped me get a name for it and grow in that sense and kind of be the person. And then I got an email from someone right when I was in the middle of interviewing for jobs, and I had two different jobs tell me that having interviewed me, they realized their job application advert thing was wrong, and that they were looking for someone different to what it said. I'm like, oh, great, okay, you're not going to hire me because you want someone different. Okay, I guess it's not my fault. So I was looking for a job, needed money. Got an email from someone who said, "Do you do pen tests?" Like, sure, why not? I need some money. Let's do this thing. And they're kind of my client zero. They kind of started the whole thing. So I did that for them. Had a lot of fun, and I figured, what the hell? Let's try and make this a thing. So I put a tweet out saying, who's looking for Laravel security audits and pen tests? Got a bunch of interest, and it became a full-time thing very quickly from that point.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I've been doing it ever since, like 3 years now. All from that one random email. It's pretty funny. And yeah, that's kind of how I got to where I am now. So I haven't really done full-time dev ever since.
I love that. So, I guess for me, not or for the listeners and me, that's not like on the security side very much. What exactly is a pen test?
Yeah, so yes, so trying to think how best to explain it without jumping over. Yeah, so pentest is basically trying to break into the application, and then proving how you did it. Um, and so the problem that a lot of companies have is when they've got their application, they're so familiar with their code and how it works and how it's supposed to work that you can use the same form 50 times and test it 50 times, and you'll never think to upload something weird or add in some data that shouldn't be there or something like that. And you won't think about the different ways that you could break it and exploit it. you'll just think about what it's supposed to do, and so you'll have those mental limitations. And as part of a pen test, you get someone who isn't familiar with your code to try and break it, and think about all the different things that you could do with it that are outside the norm. And so as part of my pen test, I first read through the code, and that gives me a good idea of, I can see like validations are missing here, or this is missing authentication, or there's unescaped output, and all those different things like that point to vulnerabilities, and then I try to break it. And so I will, go into the interface, and I will try and put some cross-site scripting in there, or some SQL injection, or upload a malicious file and that sort of thing, and then see if I can get the vulnerability happening. And if I can do that, if I can prove that there is a vulnerability there, then I can show my client, and I can say, see, I was able to upload this file, I got remote code execution on your server, which is always a wake-up call for them, but it's done in an ethical way, and so it's not someone who's trying to exploit their system, it's someone who's showing them how they can fix it. So I guess you could boil down to a pen test as a friendly hacker finding the vulnerabilities before a malicious hacker does, and so you can fix them before someone who finds them and exploits them.
That makes sense. Yeah, that's it. For whatever reason, it reminds me of that old meme. It's like the product tester, walks into a bar and orders 0 beers and orders 10 beers,
Yep.
orders 1 million beers, and just to see what would break. It sort of has those same vibes, but with the with the cross-site scripting and all the other stuff that's really dangerous.
Yeah, exactly. That's basically it. Yeah, and it's like a good QA person will be able to think of all the different things they could do to try and make something break. And a pen tester is the same. You get a sense for what you can throw into places that it hasn't been expected, and to see what happens when it goes in there. Yeah.
That's awesome. So you're securing Laravel site. It's both a site and a newsletter, right? You have,
Yep.
I guess I'm trying to think of the right way to word this, but your articles are emailed every day, but then you can also view them on the site if you come back later. I guess you have like subscriptions, and you can get some that are only available if you subscribe, things like that. But you've been doing this for, man, is it 3 years now, 4 years, just running that site alone?
Yeah, I think it was the 3-year anniversary recently, a couple of months ago. And yeah, so it started off as Substack. Originally, when I first launched it, it was my plan was just as having it as a paid mailing list. I wasn't really thinking about having the web presence or free tips or anything like that. It was all just a paid mailing list to see how it would go. It was in the time when I wasn't working, and Substack was being talked about a lot as a cool way of a cool new way of doing things. That everyone else is building a static course and things, and I thought, why don't I do something that's more of an active, ongoing thing? And it's kind of changed a lot since then, because I didn't think about the web presence, but Substack had a great web presence for it. So even though I was publishing sending out the emails every week to my subscribers, I had a lot of people sign up that didn't pay. They just signed up for at that point in time, it was just a 1 monthly security tip that was free. And then you would get the rest of the weekly tips and in-depth articles would be for the paid subscribers only. But I had a lot of people sign up as free users, and the website saw a lot of traffic as well. Just people going to the articles and sharing them, the ones that were free anyway. And so I've changed it a bit over time. So now, yeah, it does have the mailing list, and that is still the core part of it where you sign up for the emails. But there is also the web presence is important as well. And so you can share the tips. And now all the security tips are free. You can access those online, and you get those emailed each week. And then it's just the in-depth articles every month are the ones that are paid behind the paywall. And so you can, when you go to the website, you'll see the introduction to that, then you'll hit the paywall thing. And if you're subscribed, then you'll get the full thing if you pay for it. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. That's always, every person that puts out a free newsletter always has the grass is always greener on your side, where it's like, what if this was a paid newsletter and I still had the same subscribers, and then it would be so much easier.
Yeah.
But I think it's awesome that I guess the community actually is able to support, buy the subscription, support you, and also get all these, really, really good tips, throughout each week and throughout each month. But that does lead me to a question, like, what is the number one security issue you see in just sort of random Laravel apps?
Yeah, cross-site scripting is number one. It didn't used to be. I had it rated at number 7 for my previous list, so it's risen up quite a lot, which is quite interesting. but it's becoming quite a common thing to find, especially through like WYSIWYGs or like Markdown editors where it looks like it should be safe, and when you try and paste some JavaScript or something into the editor, then it doesn't let you, or it escapes it, and so you think this is all good. But if you just intercept the request that goes from the browser to the server, you just throw the JavaScript back in there, and the server goes, oh, I got this from WYSIWYG, I'm just going to trust the HTML, then outputs it, and bingo, you've got cross-site scripting.
True. I guess my question, does Markdown help that? Since in theory it shouldn't. I guess it can still have HTML tags though, because then you have this false sense of security.
Yeah, Markdown's actually one of the big problems because the Markdown spec allows inline HTML, and Laravel's Markdown parser that is built into the string helper, yes, it does. It has the GitHub flavored Markdown, and it will escape script tags, but it won't escape any other HTML, which means you can throw another HTML tag in there, use a JavaScript event, handle like on error. My favorite is an image tag with a broken image and on error, and then you've got JavaScript cross-site scripting running in there. Really simple to do, and works on most Markdown fields that I've come across. Because you think it looks like it's safe, and you throw a script tag in there, and it's acting like it's safe, but it's actually not. So that's quite a big vector that I tried to get fixed in Laravel, but there was a bit of pushback about changing the defaults on the Markdown parser, so that never got changed, which kind of frustrates me.
Yeah, I guess too, like, from the Laravel standpoint, you probably have like a million apps out there already, and then as soon as we, as soon as they make a big change like that, it's like boom, everybody's broken, everybody's mad. But that's something really good to know about. That's like the Laravel news site, so we do everything in Markdown, but we kind of get around that because we only allow like 3 people to write articles, and if you want an article, then you send it to us, and we put it in there, and hopefully we wouldn't miss something like that.
Yes, that's something that I have to deal with in the pen test. Is you think about like who has access to these fields, and if it's an admin layer, then you have a chat to the client, and is it a problem if your admins can inject JavaScript? And sometimes that's what they want. They want their admins to be able to add in custom JavaScript if they need certain functionality. Well, other times they don't want the admins to have any access to JavaScript. So yeah, it's one of the fun bits about the pen test is figuring out where that level is and who's supposed to be able to do what.
Yeah, that's pretty true. So these pen tests, like you really have to spend a couple days just talking with the client before you actually get all the sort of details you're going to need to really go in there and try to break stuff, or is that like a questionnaire you can just fill out and you already know, like, this is the important stuff that I need to know before I jump in here?
It's more of an ongoing thing. So the audits normally take a couple of weeks, and we'll set up like a Slack channel or something, and then I'll be chatting to them in that while I'm doing the pen test. So if I'll find things and either report them as issues if I can confirm they're an issue, or I'll ask them the question and say, I found this, how does it get used, or what are the implications of this, and then we decide from that point if it's a vulnerability or not and how it should be rated. But yeah, I like to have that ongoing communication and report things as I go. And then so I'll have some clients that actually fix things while I'm auditing as well, which is really cool. So then by the end of the audit, they'll have fixed everything I've found, and so the report I give them can list everything as resolved, which is really nice for them, because then they get a report that shows they're very proactive and there are no issues, and anything that was found gets resolved, which is always really good, especially if they're like giving them out to their own potential customers or things like that, using it as some form of sales and marketing. So yeah,
that's pretty good, and it's probably better for them because it's all fresh in your mind as they're going through it. In case they get stuck on something, they can just like ping you and you're like, oh yeah, I just looked at that yesterday and this is what I'm seeing, versus like waiting 2 months and then come back and you're like, oh, I don't remember anything about this project.
Yeah, exactly. And we can also iterate too. Like they'll make a fix, and sometimes, especially if it's like a complicated cross-site scripting or something hairy like that, they'll apply a fix, then I'll give another test, and if I find a different way to break it, I can go back to them and say, oh, you'll need to do this instead, or I'll suggest some code. I've even got one client that just wants me to write the code myself, and so rather than taking the time doing PRs and doing reports and issues, I'll just do a PR and I'll fix their issues if it's something that I can fix. If it's something that's bigger, then I'll raise it as the issue and they can fix it. But if it's a quick fix, like changing a tag around or something, or enabling some feature, I'll just do it myself and send a PR into them, and then they can approve that, which works really well for their workflow.
That's nice, nice. Um, so sort of taking a step back to your securing Laravel. Like, what is what's been your most popular article, or like what's most interesting to Laravel devs so far? I'm thinking of just like security is interesting to me because like you don't know what you don't know. So how well, I guess what's the best way of getting in? Um, finding out your really good content that we all should really just start with. Hey, this is where we start, and this will get us up and going.
Yeah. Just bringing up my analytics now to see what the top articles were. But I think one of the what I recently finished a couple of weeks ago is a 4-part series on my process of pen testing. And so I've gone through basically my whole. So you know Chirper, the Bootstrap Laravel application you can build through the tutorial that Jess Archer built. And so I
Right.
followed
Yeah.
that. Then I basically added a bunch of vulnerabilities to it, and then I wrote a series about it. So I've got a series of articles on securing Laravel that go through and do a full pen test on what I call Chirped, which is a vulnerable version of Chirper. And I think that's a great spot to start if you're interested in like doing your own pen testing or security auditing, or just testing your application and having an idea of what to look for to see if your application is secure, because it goes through from the very start of my pen testing process right through to the end. I've got a bunch of different like code searches I use in there, and mention some of the tools I use and that sort of thing. So that's a really good spot to start if you're interested in that side of things. In terms of if you're like looking for a specific vulnerability, I try to tag things with like vulnerability names. So if you're interested in cross-site scripting, you just go to the search box and type XSS in, and then it'll give you, there's a tag there you can click on, and it'll give you all the cross-site scripting articles there. Um, I I think I'm trying to think of where else a good place to start would be, but it's, I guess, just kind of subscribing to the mailing list and just reading the next email that comes through. I mean, things, unless it's like a specific series, like my pen testing Laravel series, which you kind of have to read in order. The emails, the articles are kind of all standalone, and so you can just jump in wherever. So if that's just a general want to get started into Laravel security, then that's a good spot. That, just kind of start up where I'm up to. But yeah, I don't really. I probably do need like a getting started guide, and here are some good starting articles. I don't really have that. Yeah, it's a good idea. I should
Yeah.
do that.
Nice, nice. See, glad to help. Glad to help. Um, so actually, I have a security question. So this is something that I
Yep.
was thinking about today. I want to get your opinion if this is a terrible idea or a good idea. So my email software can have different segments. So like you can put different tags on different people. So we have a daily tag and a weekly tag, and basically if you have the daily tag, you get the daily newsletter. Weekly, you get the weekly newsletter. It's pretty basic. But I wanted a way to opt out, and so I was thinking you could just hit a URL, like opt out daily, and then pass their email address in as a get request, and
Yep.
just remove that tag from them. It seems to work. My only concern is, since it's a GET request and they're going to see it in the browser, what's going to stop them from just putting random email addresses up there? And I assume that might be a security issue.
Yep, definitely a security issue. Also, depending on the response, like if they put an email address in, there does the thing say confirm if they've been removed, or does it, or say I can't find you in their list as well? Because then you've got an enumeration risk. Although given the nature of the site, people knowing that someone subscribed to your mailing list isn't a huge risk.
Right.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing though, because you can go through and disrupt. Like if you want to just remove everyone that you can find from downloading emails, then it's going to disrupt your business. If people are like, easy way to fix it is to use Laravel's signed URLs, because then
That's
it makes
true.
the URL unmodifiable, and so if someone tries to change the email address, the signature is going to break, and so it's not going to work. So that would be my recommended fix for that.
Well, I was going to say the only thing is I'm using a third-party email service, and I can't control, I guess, coming
So it's
in.
not going through your app at all.
Yeah, right, because basically they just hit the page, and then I just sending them a curl request to remove the tag from the user. The problem is in a perfect situation, they would be logged into my site, and I could just use the auth user, and that would be
Yep.
easy. But since the email addresses are separate from the users on the account, it's like I don't have any sort of way to map those two together.
I
So
see what you're saying,
I'm gonna have
yeah.
to start thinking better on that, on a different way of setting that up.
Yeah. Do you have any sort of unique ID that you could identify the users with? Like a UUID or a hash or something?
Maybe I'm gonna have to check on that. That seems like that would be a lot safer, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I mean, if it's a numerical ID, then that would be worse than emails because iterating in
Just
numerical IDs is much easier. Yeah.
increment it.
Yeah, that would be worse. Stick with emails if that's the case. But if you've got some form of unique string that doesn't follow a pattern, then that would remove that as a problem. Yeah, because it'd be much harder to enumerate through those ones.
Gotcha. Okay, that's interesting. I'm gonna keep researching this then, because as I was doing it, and then I was like, this doesn't feel right. It just had that feeling like this is gonna be a
Yep.
problem, and so I'm really glad I got to ask you live here on the show. That way I get the expert's opinion on how I'm screwing
help.
up. All right, so let's talk a little bit about. So you said you have a new book / course coming out, maybe, or you've been working on it and you're trying to get it out.
Yep.
Let's go into details more about that.
Yep, sure. So that is Practical Laravel Security, which I will admit is a slightly confusing name compared to Screen Laravel. But yeah, so Practical Laravel Security it's an online hands-on course designed at teaching Laravel developers, or really anyone, I guess. You don't have to be specifically Laravel, about how vulnerabilities actually work. And so it's designed around a series of challenges that say, like, there's cross-site scripting on this page. You need to exploit it to do something. And then the user has to go through and complete the challenge and perform the vulnerability. And the idea behind it is that, like, I know personally, I learn best by doing things. And so just reading an article saying cross-site scripting happens because you don't do this and blah, 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 you fix it because of this, it's just all words. And if you're just reading it, you're not really going to take a huge amount in. But if you're explained the sorry, if you know the history, like the theory of how cross-site scripting will work, and then you're given a form that is vulnerable and you're told, okay, now exploit this, and these are all the tools you need to do it, then, and if you physically go through the process of typing in the code and then submitting it and then seeing it in action, you're going to remember it more and you're going to understand the mechanics of it. And then you can take those skills back to when you're a developer. And so if you could feel the mechanics of how to exploit these vulnerabilities, then you're working on your own code and you type, you do a bit of code and do some testing, and something in the back of your mind might ping and go, wait a second, I wonder if I could exploit this. And so as a developer, you have that background which will allow you to identify these issues in your code and then fix them and test them. And it's if you can exploit vulnerabilities in your own code, then it makes the easiest way to test it. Because rather than looking and going, I think you could maybe use that cross-site scripting, I might try and fix that. If you can actually cross-site script your own application, you can then fix it and know that you fixed it because you can't exploit it anymore. And so Practical Laravel Security is built around that idea. So it's all text-based, which is something that some people will find a bit weird. I'm not good at doing video production, so I figured rather than doing that, I'll just make it all text-based. And it's geared around the challenges, as I said. I originally started working on it 2 years ago, and I'm trying really hard to get it done this year because it's been far too long. And so I'm in the middle of doing an injection module at the moment, which has... First, it starts off with doing local file inclusion, which is kind of injection. I'm kind of cheating there. And then we do some object injection. Had fun making a safe way to allow for peer object deserialization attacks. So trying to do that in a safe way without letting someone actually hack my server while still making them feel like they're hacking my server was an interesting thing. And I know some sites will have like use virtual machines and other containerized stuff in order to do that safely. I've just got a bunch of pattern recognition on the string, and so it's kind of actually not deserializing anything. It's just pretending that it is and looking for for the output the challenge asks for. So it's kind of cheating a bit, but it gets the desired effect, and then it should give someone a really good feel for how you actually do object deserialization attacks. And then when you're using serialize next time, you're going to think, oh, wait a second, can someone modify this and run some code on my server? And if so, that would be bad. And yes, that's kind of the thing behind the course. And as I said, I'm trying to desperately get it done so that then it's done, because it's kind of been looming over a bit. And yeah, but I'm really excited about it. I think it's a really cool idea, and I just love working through the challenges and seeing people trying to solve them.
For sure, yeah. I was that was you touched on what my question was. I was gonna be like, are they just like pulling from GitHub a repository that has security vulnerabilities, and you're just like at your task with finding them on your own machine, but you went into like how you're doing it on the server. So that's actually pretty cool, because then you can just do it anywhere. You don't even have to like
Yeah.
pull down a whole app or anything like that. So that sounds pretty sweet.
Yeah, I mean, it would have saved a bunch of effort if I just managed to download the app, because then it could just run the actual things live. But I like the process of having it on the website, because then you don't need to configure anything locally, and then it can keep track of your progress. And there's also something I haven't built yet, but what I want to do is have, as part of the team support, is mean that you can have, if you have like your whole dev team in there, you can see how they're going and you see which challenges they've completed. And so you could set it as part of like their annual security awareness, where the staff have to go through and complete all the challenges. And that would be a really cool way of doing security awareness for your dev team, would be them actually practically doing those things when they refresh those skills. And even if they did it last year, like they could do it again this year. If they remember it, great. It's going to be easy for them. If they don't remember it, well, it's going to remind them of those skills. And I think that's going to be a really good benefit for dev teams that want to get on it and do that sort of thing as part of their practical security learning.
I like that. And then you're gonna have to gamify it. So then like when everybody in my company are doing this, and whoever wins gets the gold trophy and gets to brag at Christmas parties.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yes, you could definitely gamify it. I need to, as I said, I haven't built those Teams tools yet, but there's something that I do want to build, and I think it would be very beneficial. Yeah.
Yeah, that's I don't know. I love little games like that. It's like it brings the camaraderie, and I'm probably the only developer that likes that.
No, I've actually audited a few different websites that part of their out of their app is gamifying different, all sorts of interesting things I never thought about have been gamified, and it's for them it works really well, because of it's an idea that's really cool and it fits quite nicely. So I think it's not just you. I think a lot of people find that is a good way of doing stuff.
I need to figure out what to gamify on Laravel News. Maybe like if you read every article for the week, I give you a badge. Be like, John Doe read everything.
People are just going to click on the links.
yeah. You have to spend 20 seconds with some scrolling, and then you win.
I hit a typo on this one page. Go find my typo to prove you've read it. Yeah.
That's perfect, actually. Typos everywhere too. That's awesome. I was going to lead to. I was sort of going to step back. Like, I'm wanting to like. So you get a brand new Laravel app, and we talked about like cross-site scripting was kind of your number one vulnerability that you're hitting lately. What do you do out of the box with a brand new app that maybe normal people like that's not in the security side of this? What are the, basically, I do Laravel new and I get started. Like, do you do extra things when you start a brand new Laravel app that we should all be doing, maybe?
Yeah, I do. I think I've got an article about this.
Ooh,
Where is it?
I like that.
I'm trying to remember what I called it. I mean, I've got there's one here about how I configure an app on Forge. And so the process I go through when I'm setting up a new Forge server, an app on Forge. So it says commit first install. So here we go. So I run through this list and add things that aren't mentioned. So yeah, first up, after installing, do a commit of the initial version. That's boring. Okay, so what I do, and this is something that I know a lot of people don't do, but I find it's really valuable, is I update the example environment file with production values, but not like keys or anything, but I will change app environment to production, turn debug mode off, set the URL to be my final production URL, and the app name to be the production name. And that way, when I deploy to production, I don't need to go through and change those, and they're not going to get forgotten. Because it's much easier every time you set up a dev environment to change debug to true and production to local. Then if you're deploying to production and you forget one of those, then you're going to get debug mode left enabled on the site, which you don't want to do. So that's a big one for me, is just setting those in the environment example file. But yeah, don't do any keys or any credentials. That stuff should never be on local development. That should always only be in production. But if those things break, then your app's broken because your integration is broken. But if you leave debug mode on, your app will work, but you're going to leak a bunch of debug data, which is always bad. The next thing I do is input Canary tokens in, which, if you haven't heard of Canary tokens before, they kind of come from like the canary in the coal mine, where if the canary dies, then you know the air's bad, you've got to get out of there. And so you put Canary tokens are basically booby traps, little like fake credentials and keys or fake MySQL dumps that if an attacker tries to use, if someone tries to use them, you'll get notified. And so I always put, and if anyone tries to hack into my apps, they'll know this now. But I always put like you can get AWS credentials, which you can put in your environment file. Which if anyone tries to connect, then you'll get a notification to say that someone tried to connect using AWS credentials. And so I'll put that in my env environment file, in the .env.example file. And so if someone gets access to that, so on my GitHub or something, and they try to connect to the AWS, well then I'll be notified. And then I'll put like the MySQL dumps in, and there's a few other ones that are quite useful. And so and it's really frustrating actually. So every single pen test that I do in my report, in my additional recommendations, I say use Canary tokens. And I have done a bunch of repeat audits for clients. None of my clients have ever put Canary tokens in. It's like, really? You could put this in and catch me in my pen test, but sure, whatever. So yeah, that's kind of funny. But yeah, Canary tokens is next.
I was gonna say I've actually never heard of Canary tokens. The only thing I've ever heard of them was like a canary in like a legal document saying we've never been sued by the government, and then once they have been, once the government has access to everything, then they remove that line, and then it's up to you to find that hey, we actually
it's the same deal. Yeah,
so it's the same idea. Okay, I like that.
Yeah, so they're cool. After that, now this one's becoming slightly less important, but there's the secure flag for session cookies that I always set to true. In a recent version of Laravel, that now honors the protocol that's being used. Previously, it wasn't. It was just false by default, and there wasn't an environment flag in the .env file at all, which was really frustrating, because most sites wouldn't have this enabled. And so without this, your cookies will be sent on non-encrypted connections as well, which is a problem if someone can downgrade attack your request, one of your users, then they can get your session cookie and they can log in as the user. So I always set that to true. As I said, recent change in Laravel means that now follows the protocol. So if your site's been accessed via HTTPS, then it will have the true flag set. So that's really good. It's a nice upgrade. But that's something that I always flick, just to force it on there. People often leave it disabled because local development, you often don't have HTTPS. But I use HTTPS in my local development, so it doesn't really bother me. But yeah, it's something it's one of those things, even if you do use like HTTP only in your local dev, set it in your .env.example file and set it to true, and then override it on local, rather than trying to remember to do it on production, because you will forget. I always start up with a content security policy as well. And so I like to build, it's so much easier to do a content security policy if you are configuring it while you're building your app, rather than trying to add it on afterwards. Because then any time you add in a new third party or anything else you need to do inline scripting or anything like that, you can set the policies as you're building it rather than having to remember it from the end. So it means you get a much more robust policy because it's built for your application and knowing all the different subtleties that you need rather than trying to figure them out at the end. So that's what I do then. Remove any unused dependencies that you don't need. So if there's any extra stuff, Laravel doesn't have as much extra stuff that it used to, so it's not much of a big thing anymore, but for a while they did have a bunch of extra things installed that you could just get rid of that you weren't using. And that's all Forge stuff. Where's my other list? What else have I got that's useful?
I was going to say, I was going to say, so do you recommend doing something like Cloudflare or one of those providers as far as like your first line of defense for a lot of the security things that it offers, or you just don't even think about those things?
Yeah, I mean the free tier in Cloudflare is quite good just for basic protection. So yeah, there's no harm in enabling that. I think any layer of security that you can add is always worth it. And as I said, like the Cloudflare free tier, it doesn't give you a huge amount, but it gives you something which is better than nothing. So if you can enable it, then go for it. It's always beneficial. And if you've got the budget to pay for their upgraded version, then it's definitely worth it as well. The other benefit of setting that up when you're first building your app is that you can configure like your trust host and proxies properly and get them working, rather than trying to get them done later. And that's another common vulnerability I find is when they're not configured properly, usually because the app is being deployed the deployment is being changed, so they just blanket whitelisting, allow listing everything, which then allows you to spoof stuff and cause some more fun. Um, the other things I do, like setting up the other security headers as well, like HSTS, so strict transport security, sub-resource integrity. So just a bunch of those little things that are easy to, I mean, they're easy to add later, but if you just start doing it from the beginning, then it just saves the mental load and then having to kind of figure out how to do them later. Yeah.
That makes sense. So do you have your own like little I want to say fork, but do you have your own little fork of like the Laravel framework with all the stuff that you do, and then you just pull that down? Like, is it like your own starter kit, or you just go through every time you start a new app and just remember all these steps?
I just do it every time I start a new app. I don't start new apps enough to be able to maintain my own thing. I think it would take more effort to try and maintain a little starter kit than it would to just copy the things. I'll generally, when I'm starting a new app, I'll just open up one of my existing ones next to it and just go through and copy paste stuff. It seems to work for me. I mean, Laravel by default is actually pretty good. It has a lot of same defaults enabled. There's only a couple of things that frustrate me, but in general, it's actually pretty good in terms of what it gives you. And most of the security issues that you come up with around Laravel aren't configuration based. They're more app logic based. Like if you're forgetting to add authorization in places, or you're unescaping output or whatever, which is stuff that Laravel you can't default. So that's just part of how you build the app itself.
Right. Which, I mean, if you came from WordPress, so like anything's going to be more secure.
WordPress is an interesting thing. WordPress core itself is actually pretty robust and secure. They do a lot of work in that. The problem with WordPress you get is when you add in plugins and themes. And some of those are just terrible. Is a nice word.
No, it is. Yes, and that was when from my WordPress days. I always remember, like you could just set up a basic WordPress site, do the fresh install. It's like this thing's pretty nice, and then as soon as you want something, it's like, oh my gosh! Now it's like slow and like everything's wrong, and I don't know what's wrong. It's just crazy.
Yes.
So I don't miss any of that. So I'm glad we've kind of moved on, or I'm glad I moved on.
Agreed. Yeah, it is much nicer working in the Laravel space.
Well, so to go back to your custom stuff, so how's your I guess availability? Like, say I want you to pen test my app, how does that work? Like, they just need to contact you and be like, do a call, go through the whole flow, and then you just set up and get started on it when you have time. Is that how the typical flow works with that, or I don't know, or is it something else? Like, is it more like a consulting firm where you kind of go in every month and keep auditing them later and later, or
both actually. So I do offer both. So like a standalone penetration test, which most customers want, send me an email. It's the easiest way to contact me. We generally figure most of the details out via email. It's actually rare that I do a call with a client, which works well for me. I'm not a huge fan on calls, and I work at weird hours anyway. So I have a kind of a set of standard questions that I ask that give me an idea of the size of the application, number of models and routes and controllers, what the stack is, what the front end is, what infrastructure, etc. And so I'll get the answers to those and send through a quote, which is usually a multiple of weeks. Like a small app, like 1 or 2 weeks, up to large apps, 4 or 5 weeks. I think the longest one I've done was 8 weeks, which was quite epic. And then, so I'll quote the price and how many weeks, and then, when I've got time. So I work on one client at a time. And so I'll just kind of slot it in on my next available slot that fits, unless the client has a specific need for they need it done after a certain time or done by a certain date. Sometimes it'll be a case of they've got compliance coming up and they need to have the pen test report done by like the end of October, for example. And so then I'll see if I can fit them in before that date. And then get access details from them. So they'll give me access to their code and then login details for a staging site. I don't touch production sites. It's just one of the safety things that I don't do. I mean, I do passive scans, which is just checking like the basic responses for a basic ping, like a GET request, but I won't log into production at all, and I won't do any pen testing, which means that I'm not likely to end up touching any customer data or accidentally removing any customer data. So it avoids that risk entirely, which is nice. Sometimes it means that staging has different configuration of production, which does, like I'll report an issue and then the client will say, well, this is only an issue on staging. And there's a really funny one I found recently that was hilarious about staging. I'll tell you in a sec. But in general, yeah, I'll just touch the staging site. So they'll give me access to the code and staging, and then I'll do my work. We'll connect up with like a Slack channel, and I'll interact with them while I'm doing the audits. And at the end, so I'll report issues as I find them, so they can fix things as I find them. Then at the end, I'll give a formal report, which has all the information and all the formal stuff needed to use that as like a compliance document or whatever. And so that's a standard, standalone pen test. The other option that I do is what I call quarterly reviews, which every quarter I'll do like 1 or 2 weeks of review of your app. And check any recent changes that you've made, check any PRs that you want me to review, and dive deep into specific things. And so for some clients that actually forms like their annual pen test, and so those reviews will add up, and at the end of it they'll get a formal report that covers everything. While for other clients, it's just diving deep into specific things and what they need help with. And then they can ping me throughout those, between those audits, between those reviews, they can ping me directly, and if they've got any security questions, and we can chat about them, and I can hang out in their Slack if they want me to, and have that sort of engaged thing. So it depends. I'm quite flexible. It depends on what my client needs for their security, if they just need those annual pen tests or if they want their ongoing security support, which I'm happy to do.
Nice.
Yeah, that story that I was going to say with the...
Oh, yeah. Tell us about this story.
Staging site. I found a cross-site scripting vulnerability, and I was triggering it, and I was getting, I just throw in the alert that says boom. And so I typed in my inline image tag. I think it was an image tag. No, it was a script tag. So it was an inline script tag that just had, script alert boom. And it was popping up. I'm like, this is great, nice, a screenshot, and yes, reporting it. And then I realized they have a content security policy that was supposed to be blocking it, because it was blocking. It wasn't allowing inline scripts. But then I was looking at the code, and something was injecting the nonce. So if you know content security policy, if you to allow inline scripts to run, you have one of the options is to add a nonce, which is a random string onto that tag. And so something was adding the nonce onto every single script tag on the page after it had generated the page, which meant that my cross-site scripting was being allowed and being triggered and running on the page because something was specifically allowing it to run and bypass the content security policy. Just hilarious that I trolled through the code. I couldn't find it anywhere. I looked at a couple of the packages they were using that were related to that sort of thing to figure out, is this something that one of those packages is doing as a helper thing, because it was running through a WYSIWYG editor. And it turns out they were doing it at Cloudflare because their staging site has a different domain to their production site, and they found the easy solution to fix their content security policy problems was to just blanket allow all script tags on staging so that they wouldn't have violations, so it would just work. Like production was fine, doesn't have the problem at all, but staging, because they're doing a hack to allow it to work, was letting me get my cross-site scripting. So I had a good laugh at that. It was great, and purely unique to staging.
That sounds like something I would do. I'll be honest with you. That would be something I would do for sure.
Oh yeah, I can totally see how they arrived at that. It makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know if you're old enough for this, but in the old days, do you remember when you would just like view source on a website, and then you would just add the base href tag to the head, and then you would have all the links, and you'd have all the style, you'd have everything right there, and you could do it locally. Yep. Yeah, that was sort of how I learned to be a developer in those early days. Just
yes.
So anyway, yeah, it's just funny how it was way easier back then. Well, I don't know if it was easier. It was just there was not enough training resources available back then. That was the only thing. You had to go visit all these forums and get random questions that may not be the right answers.
You just copy the JavaScript from the site that had the cool thing you wanted to copy from it. You just open up their file. It was all, nothing was compiled. It was all simple.
This is true. Yes. Hot script. You remember hot scripts and PHP classes, of course. And then, man, there was another one. It was like, I don't know. Going back down memory lane, but yeah, it was terrible.
Yes.
It is.
They were interesting.
It's sort of funny though. I sort of do miss like just copying and pasting a PHP class. I'm like, this is all I need. Why do I need a whole package with 40 files? I just really need this one thing. Yes. But it's like, no, that's not cool anymore, or not. You shouldn't do that anymore. But I'm like, it made so much sense.
Yes.
But anyway, yeah, it's
Remember
funny.
There was a JavaScript package that gave you PHP functions in JavaScript. They just replicated all the core PHP functions as JavaScript functions. So PHP developers could just use, like, I don't know, string to lore or whatever it is that we've got in PHP in the front end. That's fun.
That was, yes. Well, somebody man, handlebars. I think somebody converted handlebars to PHP, or not handlebars. It was, I'm drawing backbone and whatever you use with backbone underscore. Somebody did underscore for
yes.
PHP, and I remember bringing that in, which is actually a lot of, if I'm not mistaken, this is a lot of how Laravel collections came about. Was because of sort of how they did things in underscore and that side. So anyway,
that makes sense.
it's kind of interesting. Little
I
Laravel
think it's going
trivia.
both ways, yeah.
But yeah, that's awesome. Well, I think we can wrap it up unless you have anything that I have missed that you want to talk about or anything like that.
No, I think that about covers it up, yeah.
So you are going to you're going to be at Laracon AU for sure. You coming back to the US next year?
I hope so.
I hope so.
I mean, I've submitted a talk for EU. I haven't heard anything yet. I'm still fingers crossed that I'll get into EU. Don't like my chances because they keep announcing speakers that they aren't me. But we shall see. I don't know if they've picked them all yet or not. But yeah, I'll submit for US and hopefully to get there. Even if I don't get a spot, hopefully I'll be able to come. I mean, my plan was to come this year. And I was actually going to go. So I went to Laravel on Live Denmark, which was the week before, which was an awesome conference. Had so much fun there. So I spoke at that. And my plan was to go from there to Dallas to just as an attendee for US. But then plans changed at home and had to head back home because my wife had to go out and do something. And so didn't get there, but hopefully next year, hopefully I'll be able to get to it because it'd be good to see everyone again. I kind of missed it this year. It was bit of FOMO being stuck at home, hearing all the announcements of things going on and knowing that I wasn't there.
Yeah, that's the thing with every for me, like I even like the little meetup groups. It's like even if there's like 8 people there, it's still so much fun just going out and seeing everybody and talking to them and seeing all your buddies. Yeah, and then you just reminded me of, was it last Laracon? Not Texas, but the one before that, where you gave the security talk, and then somebody actually hacked in and changed the words on your screen before it.
Yeah, that was fun. So what was going on there was that my code, what I asked everyone to do was to try and guess the password, but I didn't actually have a password. I had a list of like the top 100, top 1,000 common passwords, and the code was supposed to, after I did something, it was supposed to pick the next person who typed in a password from that list was supposed to pick that as the password and use it. My code was apparently no tests and was wrong, and instead of picking the next password on the list, it picked the next password that wasn't on the list. Unfortunately, that was something slightly rude, and although entertainingly, it was kind of something that you could totally believe an Australian would do. And so I think a lot of people just thought that was just my sense of humor, which for the record is not my sense of humor, but it could have been significantly worse than what it was, even though it was very embarrassing. And yes, that's how that happened. And when you're on stage doing a talk, you're kind of in autopilot mode. And it took me a while to realize because it was subtle enough. It took me a while to realize what it actually said. I just thought, how did that get there? Okay, I thought maybe that was in my list for some reason. I hadn't noticed it. And by the time I realized it was actually something that was kind of rude, it was too late to go back and fix it, and I just had to keep going. And again, was in automatic mode, and so I didn't stop and pause and explain how that got there, which I should have done. But yeah, so that was fun. So that happened. And people were also changing my username as well, which was a loophole I'd forgotten to fix as well. So that was kind of entertaining, multiple things going wrong on stage. But the people seemed to enjoy the talk, and the core of it worked, and they edited the video online. So if you watch it on YouTube, it looks like the password's password 123. So it won't make sense, and that's the way I want to keep it. But yeah, I did that talk again at Laracon AU last year, and I changed it so that it's now a different thing that doesn't just pick a random password from the user. So it avoids that entirely, which is good. And next time I do a talk of that scale, I will have some more protections in place to prevent that sort of mass embarrassment again.
Yeah, we were all, we're sitting in the balcony. I don't think I had a balcony. We were sitting in the, in the whatever, watching it. And we're like,
yeah.
Oh no. And then you're like, at least we're kind of all adults here, so like hopefully nobody's too offended by this. But yeah, that was funny. It's all
Yeah.
those are all these good memories of we can look back
Yes.
on years later and laugh about. In the moment, you're probably like freaking out. You're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this.
Yeah, it was honestly one of the worst afternoons of my life when I got off stage, and it was so crushing having just replaying the whole thing. And but now I can laugh about it. Now I can, learn from it, change it, not making sure it doesn't happen again. And now it's a fun story to tell. Like every speaker's got a horror story or something horrific that's happened to them on stage. So I've joined that club, I guess. Yeah.
That's perfect. Oh, well, I think that's a great way to end this one because that's a perfect story. So, Stephen, though, before we do go, why don't you shout out like the links and some things that they should go and find out more about you, about what you're creating, how to book these pen tests or these security audits, things like that.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So securing Laravel is securinglaravel.com. And if you want to go find the pentesting Laravel series that I've done, it should be, at the moment, it's links in the side in like the featured section. There should be all 4 of them. But if you can't find it, you go to securinglaravel.com/pentest, and that should take you straight to them. My course, Practical Laravel Security, is practicalLaravelSecurity.com. And that'll take you to the sign up page for that. And you can sign up for the waitlist if you're not ready to buy it. And I'm hoping to have a demo out very soon that has like some of the challenges that are free to play, so you can get a feel for how it works. At the moment, it's just kind of basic information, so I need to update that. For my security audits, valorinsecurity.com will take you to the page about my security audits. So VALORIN security.com. Also, you can go to Pinkery, so pinkery.com/@Valorin. We'll have links to all of my stuff there, so that's probably a good spot to go, and also my social media. I try to be active on all the social medias, so find me on any of those. So as I said, like, Pinkery is probably the best spot to go because it does have the link to absolutely everything on there. And presumably they'll be in like the notes at the bottom of the YouTube page if I send the links to Eric.
Exactly. That's why I asked. That way, it was going to be easy for me to be like, "Oh yeah, I don't miss one," because we spoke them out while we were going through this. So that seems perfect.
Sounds
yes,
good.
I'll definitely have them both on the audio side and the YouTube side and everything like that. So, Stephen, go ahead.
I'll just add quickly. We're talking about like quarterly reviews. I don't actually have a link or a page for that yet. That's something that I need to set up for. But if you are interested in engaging me on a quarterly basis for those security reviews or any sort of like security consulting, ongoing stuff, just reach out to me directly. There's an email address on my security audits pen testing page, or DM me on social media or something. Hopefully, I'm pretty easy to contact.
Awesome. Well, Stephen, it's been a pleasure, sir. Thank you for taking this hour out of your day and coming and visiting with me. This has been great.
Thanks for having me. It's been great to chat. Good to see you again.
You too.